Stories and Documentary Network. The Lemuria continent theory presents one of the most captivating and speculative ideas in the realms of historical and scientific discourse. Originally conceived as a hypothetical ancient landmass, Lemuria was proposed to explain the distribution of species, particularly lemurs, across Africa, India, and Madagascar. The theory gained traction in the 19th century when scientists, unaware of the concept of continental drift, sought explanations for such biogeographical anomalies. Lemuria was imagined as a vast continent that once connected these regions before sinking into the depths of the Indian Ocean. The geographical significance of Lemuria lies in its proposed position, stretching from the coast of Africa across the Indian Ocean to the Indian subcontinent. This land bridge was believed to have existed millions of years ago, serving as a conduit for both animal species and early human civilizations. The Lemuria theory gained particular prominence in the late 19th century, when the idea of shifting continents was still poorly understood, and alternative explanations for the spread of species were actively sought. In the mid-19th century, the scientific community was still grappling with questions of Earth's geological history and the distribution of species across continents. Prior to the development of modern plate tectonics theory, early geologists and biologists had limited explanations for how landmasses and the species inhabiting them came to be so widely spread apart. This intellectual backdrop gave rise to the theory of a lost landmass, Lemuria. Philip Lutley Sclater, a British zoologist, made significant contributions to the idea of Lemuria. His 1864 work on the geographical distribution of lemurs across Madagascar, India, and Africa brought forth a geological puzzle. Sclater found it curious that these primates were present in these geographically distant regions but absent from areas in between, such as mainland Africa. To explain this anomaly, Sclater proposed the existence of a now submerged landmass, Lemuria, which would have once connected these regions, facilitating the spread of species. Sclater's theory, known as the Lemurian hypothesis, was grounded in the assumption that land bridges must have existed to explain such biogeographical patterns. In his seminal paper The Mammals of Madagascar, Sclater coined the name Lemuria, suggesting that the continent had served as a natural corridor, allowing species like lemurs to move across vast distances. Though speculative, Sclater's theory gained a considerable following among naturalists and geologists of his time, as it fit with prevailing beliefs about fixed landmasses and their role in shaping biodiversity. The theory of plate tectonics, which we now know governs the movement of continents, had yet to emerge. Without this key scientific framework, researchers like Sclater were left to speculate that submerged continents or land bridges must have once existed to account for similarities in flora and fauna across distant regions. The concept of continental drift, proposed decades later by Alfred Wegener, eventually provided a more scientifically accurate explanation for these biogeographical phenomena, but at the time, the Lemuria theory seemed plausible. Following Philip Sclater's proposal of the Lemuria theory in 1864, the concept began to gain traction within the scientific community. In the late 19th century, Lemuria was widely accepted as a plausible explanation for the distribution of species across the Indian Ocean's vast expanse. The idea fit well with prevailing geological and zoological knowledge of the time, as biologists and paleontologists increasingly encountered similar species in widely separated areas. With no understanding of plate tectonics, the idea of a lost continent made sense to many. The discovery of geological formations, marine fossils, and rock strata that seemingly hinted at the existence of a submerged landmass further cemented Lemuria's place in scientific discourse. Fossil evidence, especially that of lemurs, suggested a once unified landmass connecting Madagascar, India, and Africa. This explanation filled gaps in the understanding of how certain flora and fauna could exist across such distant regions. Sclater's Lemurian hypothesis fit into a broader 19th century trend of theorizing land bridges to explain otherwise mysterious species dispersals, and thus became a fixture in scientific thought during the period. Lemuria was not only linked to the distribution of lemurs, but also to the spread of various plant species and other animals found in Madagascar, India, and Africa. The similarities in the species of these distant regions required an explanation, and Lemuria provided a unifying theory that bridged the gap between continents. Scientists posited that these species could have migrated across this now lost land, surviving and evolving after Lemuria's supposed submersion. The idea of Lemuria gained further support from geologists who were searching for explanations of geological formations in the Indian Ocean. Seemingly submerged continental shelves and evidence of shifting sea levels were seen as possible indications of the once mighty landmass. With widespread acceptance among both naturalists and geologists, the idea of Lemuria became deeply embedded in scientific discourse by the late 19th century. The turn of the 20th century, however, marked the beginning of growing skepticism surrounding the Lemuria hypothesis. As scientific methodologies advanced and new theories emerged, the plausibility of Lemuria began to be questioned. One of the key challenges to the theory came from Alfred Wegener's groundbreaking theory of continental drift, proposed in 1912. Wegener posited that the continents were once part of a supercontinent, Pangaea, and had slowly drifted apart over millions of years. This explained the similarities in species across continents and geological formations without the need for a lost landmass like Lemuria. As the theory of continental drift gained acceptance, it became clear that the movement of tectonic plates could account for species distribution and geological phenomena far more effectively than the Lemuria hypothesis. The development of plate tectonics in the mid-20th century further confirmed this understanding, showing that continental plates, not submerged landmasses, were responsible for the shifting geography of the Earth. Fossils and geological formations could now be explained by the movement of continents rather than the existence of a submerged continent. In the late 19th century, as the scientific credibility of Lemuria began to fade, the concept found a new life in esoteric and occult traditions, most notably through the Theosophical Society. Helena Blavatsky, a key figure in the Theosophical movement, embraced the idea of Lemuria as a crucial part of her spiritual teachings. In her influential work The Secret Doctrine, 1888, Blavatsky reimagined Lemuria not as a simple landmass lost to geological forces, but as the home of an ancient, spiritually advanced civilization. This marked a significant transformation of Lemuria, from a scientific theory explaining biological distribution, into a mystical homeland of a race of enlightened beings. Blavatsky claimed that Lemurians were one of the root races in the spiritual evolution of humanity, a primordial race that predated the rise of other civilizations, including Atlantis. According to theosophical teachings, the Lemurians were highly spiritual beings, possessing psychic and metaphysical powers far beyond the capabilities of modern humans. Lemuria was portrayed as a vast continent that stretched across the Pacific and Indian Oceans, and its eventual destruction was attributed to the moral and spiritual degradation of its inhabitants. This mystical portrayal of Lemuria, intertwined with notions of spiritual evolution and reincarnation, captivated the imaginations of those within the Theosophical movement. Blavatsky's teachings, which merged Eastern and Western esoteric philosophies, depicted Lemuria as a place where ancient wisdom and lost spiritual knowledge flourished. The Lemurian civilization was said to have fallen due to its spiritual decline, serving as a cautionary tale for future generations. Within the broader narrative of lost civilizations, Lemuria took its place alongside Atlantis, Mu, and other mythical realms. The idea that an ancient, advanced civilization could have once existed and been lost to time resonated deeply with those who believed in a cyclical view of history. Lemuria, in this context, became a symbol of forgotten knowledge, spiritual power, and the possibility that human history extended far beyond what mainstream archaeology and history acknowledged. Theosophical teachings further elaborated on the idea that the Lemurians were not just spiritually advanced, but physically different from modern humans. Some accounts described them as towering, ethereal beings who were able to communicate telepathically and had a deep connection to the Earth and cosmic forces. Lemuria was often depicted as a utopia, a place where humanity existed in harmony with nature, before falling victim to cataclysmic forces that wiped it from the face of the Earth. As theosophy grew in popularity, so did the fascination with Lemuria among various spiritual and mystical groups. In the early 20th century, Lemuria's story was woven into New Age spirituality, esotericism, and occult traditions. Writers and spiritual leaders expanded on Blavatsky's work, drawing connections between Lemuria and Atlantis, with some claiming that both continents were part of a grander cycle of rise and fall that has shaped human history. In these spiritual narratives, Lemuria represented the golden age of humanity, where peace, wisdom, and enlightenment reigned before the eventual decline. Many New Age thinkers posited that the Lemurians, unlike the Atlanteans, were not primarily concerned with technological advancement but focused on spiritual growth and inner development. This interpretation stood in contrast to the portrayal of Atlantis, which was often seen as a society destroyed by its obsession with materialism and technological power. The myth of Lemuria grew in mysticism, with various writers suggesting that the Lemurians had not vanished completely. Some speculated that remnants of their civilization existed in remote areas of the world or that their descendants were living in spiritual realms beyond our perception. Lemuria thus became a source of inspiration for those seeking to connect with ancient wisdom, alternative histories, and the deeper mysteries of human existence. By the 20th century, Lemuria had firmly crossed over from a scientific hypothesis to a mythological and spiritual narrative. As scientific understanding of plate tectonics and continental drift rendered the Lemuria theory obsolete, its mystical and esoteric interpretations continued to thrive. Lemuria's transformation into a spiritual myth provided fertile ground for those interested in alternative histories, lost knowledge, and metaphysical teachings. The Lemurian myth persisted in modern New Age movements, with many believers asserting that Lemuria had been a center of high spiritual learning, and that its people possessed powers of healing, telepathy, and interdimensional travel. Stories of Lemuria's downfall, much like those of Atlantis, carried themes of moral and spiritual lessons, serving as allegories for modern humanity's own spiritual journey. The theory of Lemuria, despite its scientific origins, eventually took on a life of its own in popular culture, captivating writers, artists, and the general public in ways that extended far beyond the scientific community. The idea of a lost continent filled with an ancient, advanced civilization sparked the imagination of many, particularly as the concept of Lemuria began to intertwine with themes of mysticism, adventure, and the unknown. By the early 20th century, Lemuria had made its way into fiction, science fiction, fantasy, and various subcultures, where it has remained a prominent motif to this day. In literature, the concept of Lemuria became a staple in science fiction and fantasy novels. Many authors used the idea of a mysterious lost land to explore themes of ancient wisdom, advanced technology, and the rise and fall of civilizations. H.P. Lovecraft, for example, incorporated Lemuria and other mythic lost lands into his cosmic horror tales, intertwining the notion of forgotten civilizations with eldritch horrors and otherworldly mysteries. In The Shadow Out of Time and At the Mountains of Madness, Lovecraft hinted at ancient pre-human civilizations that once thrived on Earth, echoing the themes of Lemuria's esoteric interpretations. Other writers embraced Lemuria as a fantastical backdrop for adventure stories, exploring the idea of explorers uncovering remnants of ancient Lemurian cities or encountering descendants of Lemuria's advanced race. Theosophical ideas about Lemuria's spiritually evolved inhabitants, along with tales of Atlantis, often inspired these works, blending mythology, fantasy, and speculative science into imaginative narratives. Such stories helped cement Lemuria in the public consciousness as a place of mystery and intrigue, often depicted as a utopia lost to time. New Age beliefs, especially those rooted in the spiritualist movements of the 20th century, continued to breathe life into the Lemurian myth. Writers like James Churchward expanded upon the concept of Lemuria, which he referred to as Mu, presenting it as an ancient, enlightened civilization that was the cradle of human wisdom and spiritual development. His The Lost Continent of Mu series portrayed Lemuria as a precursor to all human civilizations, with spiritual and technological advancements that far surpassed what modern society could imagine. This interpretation gained a following, and soon, Lemuria was integrated into broader New Age philosophies, where it symbolized a lost paradise of human potential. Lemuria's role in popular culture persisted in various forms, from comic books to films and television shows. Science fiction shows like Doctor Who and Stargate referenced lost civilizations akin to Lemuria, blending the concept with time travel, alien technology, and ancient mysteries. These depictions helped sustain public fascination with the idea of Lemuria, keeping it relevant in modern media as a symbol of humanity's forgotten past and the quest for knowledge. The story of Lemuria also found a foothold in the exploration of indigenous myths and legends, particularly those from regions that were said to be part of or connected to the lost continent. Some New Age thinkers sought to draw parallels between Lemuria and the ancient traditions of Polynesian, South Asian, and Indian Ocean cultures, often claiming that these myths contained fragments of forgotten knowledge about Lemuria. In Polynesia, for example, the legend of Hawaii, the ancestral homeland of the Maori and other Pacific Islander cultures, was occasionally linked to Lemuria by modern mythologists. Although Hawaii is typically regarded as a spiritual or metaphorical place, some writers suggested that it might be a real, submerged landmass like Lemuria, lost to the ocean in ancient times. Similar connections were made between Lemuria and stories from the Tamil Nadu region of India, where the legend of Kumari Kandam speaks of a sunken landmass that once connected India to Madagascar and Australia. These legends, some believed, were remnants of oral histories that echoed the destruction of Lemuria. In South Asia, myths of lost lands and great floods, such as those found in Hindu texts and legends from Tamil culture, were occasionally used to support the idea of Lemuria. Tamil nationalists in the early 20th century even embraced Kumari Kandam as a symbol of Tamil pride, claiming that their culture had deep, ancient roots in a now sunken land that had predated other major civilizations. This blending of cultural myth and lost continent theories created a fusion between scientific speculation, nationalist ideologies, and spiritual belief systems. The Indian Ocean and its surrounding regions, including Madagascar and Southeast Asia, were often mentioned in Lemurian theories due to the geographical proximity and the unexplained distribution of certain flora and fauna. Indigenous legends of vast, ancient empires and lands lost to the sea helped fuel the idea that Lemuria had once existed in these areas, even though scientific evidence eventually dismissed the theory. Although many of these connections between Lemuria and indigenous traditions were speculative and often misunderstood or distorted, they highlighted the enduring allure of the lost continent myth. For those seeking ancient wisdom or a link to forgotten pasts, the idea that indigenous stories might hold the key to Lemuria's mysteries was compelling. The blending of cultural narratives with Lemuria's myth provided new dimensions to its story, allowing it to transcend geographical and cultural boundaries. The theory of plate tectonics, which emerged in the mid-20th century, revolutionized the way scientists understood the Earth's geological processes, directly challenging earlier theories like that of Lemuria. Before the discovery of plate tectonics, scientists sought to explain the similarities in the distribution of species, especially lemurs, across distant regions like Madagascar, India, and Africa through the idea of a lost land bridge or continent that once connected these landmasses. Lemuria, proposed by zoologist Philip Sclater in the 19th century, filled this gap in understanding. However, by the 1960s, advancements in geological research made it clear that continents were not static. The theory of continental drift, initially proposed by Alfred Wegener in the early 20th century, had gained significant traction. It suggested that the Earth's continents were once joined in a supercontinent known as Pangaea and had since drifted apart due to the movement of tectonic plates. This understanding of the Earth's surface as a series of massive plates that float on the semi-fluid mantle beneath fundamentally altered how geologists viewed the formation and movement of landmasses. The development of the plate tectonics theory explained many of the phenomena that Lemuria had been used to address, including the distribution of species and geological similarities across continents. According to plate tectonics, Madagascar, India, and Africa were once part of the supercontinent Gondwana, which had fragmented over millions of years. As the tectonic plates moved apart, the various landmasses were carried to their current positions, which explained the presence of similar species without the need for a lost continent like Lemuria. By demonstrating how continents moved and separated over geological time, the theory of plate tectonics rendered the idea of a massive, submerged continent unnecessary. The scientific community gradually abandoned the Lemuria hypothesis as the new model provided a more robust explanation for the Earth's geological and biological history. Although the theory of Lemuria was debunked, the discovery of sunken landmasses, or microcontinents, beneath the ocean has reignited discussions about ancient landforms. One of the most intriguing discoveries in this regard is the microcontinent Mauritius, a fragment of continental crust that lies beneath the Indian Ocean, between Madagascar and India. In 2013, scientists discovered ancient zircon crystals, dating back up to 3 billion years, in the volcanic rocks of Mauritius, an island in the Indian Ocean. These crystals suggested that the island was sitting on a much older continental fragment. The discovery of Mauritius led to the realization that fragments of ancient continents, which had been broken apart during the tectonic shifts that split Gondwana, still existed beneath the ocean. Mauritius is thought to have once been part of a larger landmass that existed between Madagascar and India before it was torn apart by tectonic forces around 85 million years ago. Over time, as the Indian plate drifted northward toward its collision with the Eurasian plate, the fragments of Mauritius were submerged beneath the ocean. While Mauritius is far smaller than the vast continent of Lemuria that had been imagined in the 19th century, its discovery has shown that pieces of Earth's ancient continental crust can indeed be hidden beneath the ocean. The discovery of Mauritius reshaped scientific discussions about the possibility of submerged landmasses in the Indian Ocean. It lent credence to the idea that there could be remnants of ancient continents that were submerged by tectonic activity, even if they do not match the fantastical descriptions of Lemuria. The concept of sunken microcontinents like Mauritius also provided a new lens through which to view the geological history of the Indian Ocean, highlighting the complexity of Earth's tectonic processes. Mauritius' discovery offers a fascinating intersection between the mythical and the scientific. While Lemuria as a vast, lost continent remains a myth, the identification of sunken landmasses like Mauritius illustrates that the Earth's geological history is far more intricate than previously understood. These findings suggest that, while the grand narratives of lost continents like Lemuria may not be scientifically accurate, there are still mysteries beneath the oceans that continue to be uncovered. The theory of continental drift explained that Madagascar, India, and Africa were once part of the supercontinent Gondwana. As Gondwana broke apart, these landmasses drifted into their current positions, explaining the shared species across these regions without requiring a land bridge or lost continent. This new understanding of Earth's geological history, along with the discovery of fossil records supporting continental drift, made the Lemuria hypothesis obsolete. By the 1960s, Lemuria was widely rejected by the scientific community. Advances in biogeography, the study of species distribution, and paleontology further debunked the need for a submerged continent. Studies of ocean floors and geological formations provided no evidence of a vast, sunken landmass in the Indian Ocean, where Lemuria was thought to have existed. Furthermore, the fossil record and molecular biology provided more accurate tools for tracing the migration and evolution of species, undermining the earlier speculative theories about lost continents. Despite its rejection by the scientific community, Lemuria did not disappear from public consciousness. The idea of a lost continent has proven to be remarkably resilient in popular culture, especially in New Age movements, pseudo-archaeology, and mystical teachings. Even as the scientific community debunked the theory, Lemuria found a new home in spiritual and esoteric traditions. Lemuria's transformation from a scientific hypothesis into a mystical land of ancient wisdom was spearheaded by figures such as Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society. In the late 19th century, Blavatsky and other theosophists incorporated Lemuria into their teachings, portraying it as a homeland of spiritually advanced beings, the Lemurians. These beings were believed to have possessed great wisdom and technology, influencing human evolution and spiritual development. This idea became central to the esoteric concept of lost civilizations, where Lemuria was often mentioned alongside Atlantis. Throughout the 20th century, Lemuria continued to feature prominently in New Age philosophies and alternative archaeology. Writers and mystics expanded upon theosophical teachings, incorporating Lemuria into narratives about ancient, advanced civilizations that had long disappeared but left behind hidden knowledge. Lemuria's spiritual narrative resonated with those seeking alternative explanations for human origins, spirituality, and lost wisdom, and the continent became a fixture in discussions of metaphysical histories. In popular culture, Lemuria has appeared in science fiction, fantasy novels, and even conspiracy theories. It serves as a symbol of mystery, representing humanity's lost potential or forgotten golden ages. Films, literature, and art have kept the myth alive, often linking it with ideas of extraterrestrial intervention, hidden civilizations, and mystical knowledge. Lemuria has also been absorbed into modern UFO lore, where it is sometimes linked with theories about subterranean or underwater civilizations. Some theorists claim that remnants of the Lemurian civilization still exist in isolated parts of the Earth or beneath the ocean. These ideas are often presented alongside the belief in UFOs, extraterrestrial life, and secret government knowledge about the past, creating a rich narrative of hidden truths that are deliberately kept from public view. The myth of Lemuria shares many commonalities with other legendary lost continents, most notably Atlantis and Mu. Each of these lost lands is said to have harbored an advanced civilization that was mysteriously wiped out, leaving behind only scattered myths, spiritual teachings, or obscure archaeological traces. Like Lemuria, both Atlantis and Mu have become fixtures in speculative history, pseudoscience, and popular culture, often featuring in discussions about ancient wisdom, extraterrestrial contact, or suppressed knowledge. Atlantis, famously described by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, is often seen as Lemuria's twin in the mythological world of lost civilizations. Both are imagined as technologically or spiritually advanced societies that flourished before a great cataclysm submerged their continents. However, while Atlantis is usually associated with Western culture and the Atlantic Ocean, Lemuria is tied to the Indian and Pacific Oceans and is more closely connected to Eastern spiritual traditions in its modern interpretations. Theosophical writings in particular made strong distinctions between the two, often presenting Lemuria as the home of the earliest spiritual beings, while Atlantis was viewed as a later, more technologically oriented society. Mu, another lost continent popularized by author James Churchward in the early 20th century, is sometimes conflated with Lemuria, though the two are distinct in origin. Mu is said to have existed in the Pacific Ocean and was presented as the motherland of civilization, much like Lemuria. Churchward's writings on Mu followed in the tradition of Lemuria and Atlantis, attributing to the continent advanced technologies, great wisdom, and a utopian society that met with disaster. Both Mu and Lemuria have become key components of New Age lore, particularly in discussions of human origins, ancient wisdom, and spiritual evolution. The journey of Lemuria from a scientific hypothesis to a myth and spiritual legend reflects the complex interplay between science, culture, and human imagination. Initially proposed in the mid-19th century to explain the peculiar distribution of lemurs and other species across Madagascar, India, and Africa, Lemuria captured the interest of scientists and the public alike. It provided a tantalizing narrative about a lost landmass that bridged continents and civilizations. In contemporary discussions, Lemuria continues to inspire interest within the realms of pseudo-archaeology and conspiracy theories, showcasing its lasting allure. The combination of historical mystery and spiritual symbolism ensures that Lemuria remains a topic of intrigue, inviting exploration into the intersections of history, science, and myth.